You would have been a great cast member on Friends.
I loved.
You would have been a
loved
Joey.
Friends. My friends and I would always go around and be like, who are you most like? I mean, I always came closest to Chandler.
To Chandler.
Well, because I get very sort of like neurotic, and I used to die laughing. But
You were a Chandler Bong.
I'm very excited and nervous to be here.
So am I. That's great. Makes two of us.
Yeah, it's the adrenaline.
Yeah.
All right.
It's the work.
It's the work of our lives. I'm such a huge fan of yours. I have been for years, and so for me this is very special. Where I'd love to start is perhaps with maybe the obvious question of doing a show during COVID and incorporating COVID as a subject matter in the show. How did you feel? How was that approaching it as from the perspective of Alex, your character, but then also just in terms of how it affected the
show
storyline? Yeah.
Well, there was obviously no COVID when we started shooting. Oh, there was,
Yeah.
it was rumblings of it, right?
Yeah.
It was like December, January, and everyone was kind of this coronavirus, which sounded so far away and something, not even a clue that this would be speeding, like a speeding train into our life. So we had shot for about a month, and then we were like, people are just dropping, like we got to shut down the studios, because all of a sudden, companies were closing and working from home. And so we were all saying, well, what about actors? We don't have the luxury of socially distancing. We're in scenes together.
Yeah.
So, and they're like, well, screw the actors. So we shut down, and then we took that time to kind of realize there was something missing in the beginning of season 2, and we couldn't put our finger on it. And not to make COVID, there was a silver lining, but in that happened, we were able to incorporate it into the show. And that's why, our writers did a brilliant job doing that, but it had to be completely reimagined. And the same thing happened with season 1, where we had about 7 shows outlined, and then the Me Too movement happened, so same thing. So I feel like our show is kind of in this place where we get to sort of actually just deliver the news literally as in real time.
Yeah, because it was interesting even for me as a viewer, because I felt weirdly some kind of relief actually that I was watching something that I was experiencing as well in the same world, because we've sort of pretended in the movies, for better or worse, that it's just non-existent, or it's not happening, the masks, everything. So just to kind of have that mirror was.
And it was also nice to not be shooting a movie that it felt, we're not disappearing and going into an alternate universe where COVID doesn't exist, and I'm a cowboy or whatever. It's terrible.
Yeah.
I'll never be a cowboy. But you know what I mean? Imagine that.
I know.
But yeah.
Well, and then also I just think, like, as an actor, because at the time, right, you were hearing so many different experiences of people getting COVID, and then obviously Alex gets COVID.
Yeah.
And just sort of like, what were some of the conversations or decisions around, like, how much of the symptoms you'd have? Because it was sort of, we didn't know, right?
No.
Like,
and in the show, we don't know.
Yeah.
It's at the beginning, and after I go to Italy, and after speaking to everyone I knew who went down with COVID, there wasn't a symptom basically that didn't exist. So it was quite intense actually, because it was also at the end of our shooting schedule, and we were all just crawling to the finish line literally. So I actually felt beat up internally, and it was perfect timing, and to be able to incorporate all of that. I no-showed a debate. I chartered a plane into the middle of a hot zone, 4,000 miles away, and I didn't tell a soul where I was going. And Chris Cuomo, who had COVID and delivered the news from his home, was very helpful for us. We talked with him a lot.
And also, I found, I don't know how you felt, like in the pandemic, watching the news was heartbreaking and exhausting, and sometimes it made me even more paranoid.
I know.
Is watching the news just immediately part of your life? I mean, I know you probably do it for yourself as well, but then did you find that you ended up watching more news as a result of
Actually,
her.
the opposite. I watched more news before because I was just also, as I love morning news shows, it kind of
Yeah.
feels like someone's in my kitchen with me, talking to me, and waking up with me in the morning. But then when we started shooting, I don't know why I actually stopped watching. It was too much.
Yeah.
It was almost too much. And just in general, the world has become, in the last couple of years,
Yeah.
it's hard to put the news on. Is this real life?
24/7, I know. It's a very dangerous lot.
Oh, yeah, sure.
A lot of murders.
I gotta go.
It's not even 4.
I know.
I have to see you again tomorrow.
It is tomorrow.
Perfect. Where are we going?
So you shot Pam and Tommy during the pandemic as well, obviously.
We did, yeah. We shot it, sort of started around this time, April, May last year, so the vaccines were just coming out, so everybody felt a little safer or a little more relief. And then it just was weird because it was the 90s.
No.
Every day for 12 hours.
Which, by the way, feels like yesterday.
I know.
Watching that
Yeah.
show, which was so weird and bizarre, I have about 1,000 things to ask you
Yeah.
about Pam and Tommy. Can I just ask one really just blatant one, get it out of the way?
Of course.
So you have a scene where you're talking to your penis.
Yes.
How do you prepare for that? And are you reading it going,
talk.
is this like, how does it read to you on the page?
I found that the less I thought about it, the better, because
Right.
you just sort of kind of, the train of thought starts to go into panic mode. But it was a tricky scene to shoot because when we were shooting it, we didn't know if it was really going to work, if it was going to be too much or not. Or
So did you shoot it kind of two ways, where it was sort of like your alter ego? Or I mean,
There were-
where you,
it was a-
suggested that it was you were talking to?
Oh no, it was there.
Okay.
They were, there were components, manual and prosthetics and things, and people with wires, sort of plugging things
Like-
into sockets.
That's crazy.
Yeah, well, yeah, because I thought, look, we have the benefits of CGI. I mean, there's,
Yeah.
but no, we went old school for it, which was an interesting experience. But look, I
Very
think,
bold, very brave.
yeah. Well, his penis is a character in the book that he wrote.
Yeah.
And so the writers, I think, were tipping their hat off to that and trying to find a creative way of how this guy would confess his love and his realization at the time for this woman, and that's what was on the page. And
Quite romantic and beautiful. I mean, how, in moments, in that 90s sort of rock and roll kind of way.
I've never done ecstasy, so I wouldn't know what I was
Big
asking.
decisions made. They made some really big
Yeah,
moves.
they certainly
just from
did.
a couple days.
I guess so, yeah. You're doing it. You're about to be the biggest movie star in the world.
You go in there tomorrow and you tell him you're doing that scene or you fucking walk.
God, I wish I could be more like you.
Were you familiar with them in the 90s?
Everyone, even in Europe, because I was, I'm from Europe originally. I came to the States in '95, right? And
From
Romania.
Romania.
Yes.
You were born.
Born and raised in Romania, yeah.
Wow.
And then I lived in Vienna for a little while, and then we finally moved to New York in '95. So I guess this thing had already happened. But I even remember Baywatch. I remember more than anything. Even in
Yeah.
Europe, we used to watch that religiously. Like,
Yeah.
communism or not, you got Baywatch.
Sure.
Yeah, you would hear about it, but I didn't really actually know what happened. And that's kind of what was surprising about doing the show. Is just that I was surprised to find out how much we didn't know about what had happened, and how many people really didn't know that the tape was stolen, or that they had
I know, I
nothing to
didn't
do
know
with
that
it, or
at
that
all.
it tore them apart to the extent that it did. And because I think that they did their best to sort of fight it and then kind of just coexist with it, and it was just all repercussions that ended up happening as a result of it. So
And it was right at the time when the internet was just
Yeah.
becoming, it really sort of shaped so much of a new culture kind of about
I
this
know.
thing of people becoming famous for basically doing nothing, but yet having these incredible careers. And then women's sort of reputation. I mean, Pam, Paris Hilton.
we've been in that invasive kind of
Yeah.
of privacy
I know.
since, and it's only gotten more and more, so.
And it's really hard. I always say I feel so lucky that we got a little taste of the industry before it became what it is today, which is just
Right.
different. More streaming services, more people. You're famous from TikTok. You're famous from YouTube. You're famous from
I know.
Instagram. It's sort of it's almost like it's diluting the actor's job.
I remember even going on auditions for shows like that, and it was like written a very specific way that you
Yes.
had to kind of work through and be aware in a certain way. And this is obviously so different, and your dialogue is very different. And just, did you find anything different with it being a streaming service, or how did you find approaching the dialogue piece of this compared to that other style?
Half hour was so easy compared to. I mean, you had an audience. It was like being
I'm like, that sounds like the most terrifying thing ever. But
And every actor who was a film actor who came onto our show to Friends was They were terrified.
Yeah.
It was the audience was like, what are they doing? Who are these people laughing at what I'm saying?
yeah.
Morning show feels like you're shooting a film. This
Yeah.
hours are this, although you're covering much more real estate a day. So the dialogue, for me, I would take every Sunday and I would just hammer the whole week out with my acting coach, and we would spend 3 hours, sometimes 4 hours, just going over every scene for the
Yeah.
week, so that I became kind of comfortable with speaking like someone who is way smarter than myself. And I mean, Billy Crudup also, my gosh, I mean, you turn a
He's
page and it'd
amazing,
just be
yeah.
like Billy, 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 Billy. Oh, our hearts just sank for him. But
I always think of what we do kind of as sometimes you're just taking inspirations and it's ingredients from different places and kind of that go into this thing that maybe. And so, did you watch just anyone in specific, news
yes.
anchors and
many. I mean,
'cause they have a way, yeah.
My dream human is Diane Sawyer. Like, she was sort of my ultimate. This is who I would like to emanate in some way. And I've known Diane for so many years, and so I had a wonderful dinner at her house right before we started, and it was like right as we were writing the shows, and just the stories were endless and fascinating,
yeah.
and so I sort of incorporate some of any little bits that I could. And Gail King was great, Chris Cuomo was great, Hoda. They were all just really excited because it is such a world behind the scenes of what goes on.
Oh yeah, that we don't see. That we
No.
don't. We just get this sort of.
The good morning, everybody.
I
Just so
know.
happy to see you and make you feel so comfortable. And then there's so much
Yeah.
crazy stuff.
And I'm gonna go toe-to-toe with you for all the best stories, screen time, and I'm not rolling over. I'm gonna compete with you.
Do it! That's what you should do. Compete. Don't roll over.
I always just, kind of was amazed at the fact that their day starts at 3 a.m. Like,
It's a very strange, like, nocturnal existence.
yeah, and it's got to play on your psyche.
Yeah. And to do it for that long. I mean, 25 years some of them have been doing this. And you have to love that job a lot. Your life is hijacked, pretty
Yeah.
much. They're in bed by 6, 7.
Yeah.
Growing up in Romania, when did you decide, I want to be an actor? And did you...
I didn't know. I was just, I guess I was like really good at impressions or something. My mom used to kind of bring me out for the show, when,
Perform.
yeah, when we would have
Perform, young man.
people over. Yeah, she didn't push me with anything. I mean, I guess for a little while she tried, while we were still in Europe. I lived in Vienna for 4 years before New York. So then I would go to these casting calls with her, and I would hate it. And then so she sort of just left me alone. And then when I moved to the city, I started going to this acting camp, Stage Door Manor, and we did musicals there. So that was the...
You did? Are you a
Yes.
singer?
Well, at karaoke, I'm
Pretty good.
pretty...
Solid.
I'm not an embarrassment, I guess.
Good to
at
know.
karaoke,
Okay.
in case you
so
wanna
you'll
go.
be invited.
Yeah.
Nice.
I guess I was like 15, 16, and then it just started from there.
And your first big break was that Gossip
Law
Girl?
and Order.
Oh, Law and Order.
Yeah. Yeah, Law and Order for sure.
Fancy. Not a commercial.
No.
You went
no.
right into the big leagues.
Yeah, Jerry Orbach, yeah.
Yes. Oh my
And-
God, I went to high school with his son.
It's such a small world out there
Wow, yeah.
in New York. That was it. And then, I guess watching a lot of TV and movies helps.
You are extremely talented, I have to say. And
Thank
you go from like a Marvel film to Flesh.
Fresh,
which
yeah,
Flesh.
fresh.
Is it Fresh or Flesh?
Fresh as in, it's really fresh.
The one about the
Yes.
The guy?
Thank God they didn't go that far as to make it Flesh, but
Why did I think it was called Flesh?
because it should be in a way.
I've been telling people you've got to see Flesh. They're like,
Yeah.
what? Oh my gosh! That's why I was like, I watched that, and then when I finished Pam and Tommy, I was like,
Yeah.
wow, this man really has sort of gone into the world of
2021 was interesting.
Yeah, interesting. But what I was saying is, you're able to you do comedy and drama seamlessly.
I appreciate that. I don't know. I don't know. It doesn't feel seamless to me. It feels
Well,
a little
usually-
bit.
But that's when you're doing your job well. Is when it doesn't
Yeah.
would seem seamless to me.
I love TM.
Do you practice?
Yeah, I do it all the time. Ever since I started, you know, it's just been like way more chill and calm. Hey! Hey! Get the out of here! I see you, mother.
You know this better than I do, because the Marvel I've done for 10 years, and you play a character for
Yeah.
a long period of time. You know, you sort of feel it's like riding a bike.
Yeah.
You kind of keep coming back to it, and then after a few years, somehow I don't know, you just go there very
Right.
easily.
Yeah.
But you do sometimes kind of, I guess for me, I was sort of interested in kind of just trying to take different turns from that.
Yeah.
As best as I could.
And
Maybe
just
for
dabble
my own.
in other for your own actor.
Yeah, or just trying to see if you can, I guess. And
Mm.
these projects had great people involved in that. I try to kind of
Yeah.
stick to.
I love one of
Better.
your directors of Pam and Tommy, Miss Lake Bell.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, I loved working with her, and you guys work
fantastic.
together.
Not
We're-
yet. We want to.
Okay.
We're just friends. We're just buds.
Yeah.
But she's pretty fantastic and did such a good job.
Yeah, and so it was a great opportunity, kind of just try something different, and.
And when you started it, what was it? What were you guys told in terms of tone? Like, what was the specific tone? Because it's so there's a definite signature to it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's funny and it's kind of high brow.
Yeah. Well, I think Craig Gillespie, who I worked with on I, Tonya, him coming onto it, it felt sort of like I understood what we were going for with that fine line between kind of comedy and drama and stuff. And it was really well written. It was
Yeah.
in the scripts. It was one of those things where you didn't really have to improvise. The sort of cadence and the inflection of how they spoke and everything were in the scripts, and the comedy of it was there too. So we just sort of had to follow this roadmap, basically.
And did you feel nervous about playing a real life person that
Yes.
it's still on the planet?
For sure. Yeah,
Assuming you guys, did you ever meet before?
I found a way to reach out and just sort of wanted to introduce myself. I just thought that was the respectful thing to do.
Yeah.
And it's bizarre because I think it's a real person, and there was so much information online, and obviously the book he had written, which also Pamela's in, but also the articles, and then there was another book written on the band. So there was a lot of research to be done. It was actually, the work was done. It
Right.
just was more kind of trying to fit into this thing that's not you.
And how long were you in that makeup chair?
Like 3 hours. Do you use that time in the makeup chair now? Is that a time for you, like where you're kind of focused, like the last sort of go around
Yeah.
on what you need to do? And is that, or is it, do you like to be, is it a moment of just taking a breath before you start, or how?
It's a little bit of both, depending on what is ahead of me. But usually, like when I do that Sunday work, which it really nails it into my kind of my neuro pathways, then it's just about lines, and then I just speed through it, and then I'll just breathe, and then I forget about it. And
Yeah.
then, or if it's going to be an emotional, which morning show is more emotional than I think I've ever been in my whole life.
I mean,
up to this day.
One of the things that I loved sort of about your performance was that I feel like when I'm watching Alex, is there's always sort of this volcano underneath that's just like almost about to, you know, and I feel like I never know when it would come or when it may come or not, and so I'm
Neither
just.
did they. It was fun to be around.
Yeah, but
I mean, no, I was never.
But that's where you kind of, why you sort of like, you know, you can't take your eyes off of you in those situations, and so I'm just curious whether, like, kind of walking with that weight and kind of keeping that, were you conscious of that a lot, or was that?
It was one of those things where when I left work, I had to drop it. I had to like listen to a funny podcast because it was literally, it felt like I was unloading years of buried feelings, which was, You know, and as my acting teacher always said, you know, acting is a healing craft. And I never understood that more than in this particular show. I mean, and others as well, but this consistently over and over and over again, you know, to just have to keep digging. And you're like, I don't know if there's anything left. But somehow you just go, oh, it's still there. There's something more.
I don't know if you ever heard this saying, because I always heard when I was from my acting teachers and stuff, that I was always told, just bring the day with you.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's like you can prepare as much as you can, but then your life is still going to happen.
Yeah.
And that was like a huge thing for me, even in auditions, because sometimes you go in auditions and you're like, please hire me.
Oh, God.
And
I
it's
was
just
the worst at auditioning.
Really?
I'm the worst auditioner.
Oh my God.
Are you a good auditioner?
I don't know if anybody is, right? But like it was still kind of a fun. I didn't mind it so much, you know.
Yeah,
actually.
that's good. I was terrified of it.
Oh
I
my
would
God.
walk into that room just shaking. It's a shock I ever got hired. Let's be clear.
Mm.
My first job was a Bob's Big Boy commercial.
Really?
I couldn't get hired for like 2 years because I was just my own worst enemy walking into a room.
I know, because it's so weird when everybody's there, and you know, there used to be like like the network tests.
Oh.
When it was sort of like a crowd, but it's dark.
Black,
you can't really
and you
see.
can't see
Yeah,
them.
they're
Maybe
just
you'll
shadows.
get a glimpse of an eye, and you're like, hello.
And you just hear a paper turn, you know,
Yeah.
kind of, you know, like, ah.
Or size.
Did you ever get that note, for example, like when you go in for something and then you have the callback for the network test or whatever of, I would always hear from my agent, just do the same thing. Don't do anything different, which almost used to freak me out more because I'd go like, what did I do that worked?
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
So let me
Yes.
ask you about a morning show.
Okay.
So concept-wise and in terms of like, particularly even with, you know, Alex and Mitch's relationship.
Oh, yes.
Did you guys always know, even after, at the end of season 1, where it was going to go, or how were some of those twists and turns, particularly with Italy and so on, kind of incorporated? Was that always a plan, or did that sort of kind
No,
of?
well, because we had to
'cause it caught-
reimagine. So we always knew after after we shut down season 1 and went on summer break. Carrie Aaron would sort of think about what season 2 was going to be about. So then met with all of us and kind of gave us the little bullet points throughout the season. And I was supposed to start in a rehab, like for mental health. And we always knew Mitch was going to die, but we just didn't know he was going to die he went to do a coverage on a war or whatever. It blew up in a building or something. It was just like, oh my God, this is so violent.
Yeah.
So we always knew that was going to happen. But then, of course, this kind of just played out really beautifully with him being sort of sent into exile in Italy to just sort of live in his shame.
By the way, I do have to comment. It's you had one of the best moments on film. You had your network moment.
Oh my God!
You know, which
yeah.
was, I mean, I feel like when you're
Mad as
watching
hell.
it, it's just insane to watch as an audience member. But then as an actor, I feel like if I read that, I'm like, yes, this is good. This is great stuff.
There's a lot of those, and I feel like Carrie really gifted all of us with the material that is like an actor's dream. From the network, you know, mad as hell, I'm not going to take it anymore. That moment, everybody has just was able to have these moments, and you have these fantasies in life of having those like outbursts, but you can't never have them.
I do at home.
You do you? Yes, no, I do. I
You
do
have
at
that
home too.
moment at home.
Yeah,
You know,
it has to go somewhere.
It's like a letter that you never send.
Yes, or you burn.
Exactly.
Write it and burn it.
Very quickly after.
Sure.
No evidence.
No.
Do you ever have moments where you, as the actor, going, I don't know if do I really want to go there? Is it, you know, can I go?
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. I would doubt my ability. Somehow that served me in being unsure if I was going to be able to hit it right.
So this is something that I relate to in the sense that I think fear is good.
Yeah.
So you're someone that sometimes like
Nervous.
If you feel, then that's a good sign.
It's a great sign.
Okay.
I
yeah.
think. And then when you get there, that somehow fuels the scene. And it works in your favor, like you said. Bring the day to work.
I know, and then maybe season 3.
We're doing a season 3.
Yeah.
I actually just had to think: am I going back to work? Am I doing a season 3? Yes, we are. In fact, I've been reading outlines. Can't tell you what happens. Yes, it was hard for me to. When we wrapped season 2, I think all of us were like, I don't know if I got this in me. And then, you know, they say apparently like giving birth you forget, which I
Wow.
did.
Yes. In line with sort of kind of coming back to a character like, sort of over time and coming back now for season 3, but then coming back with Rachel, right?
Yeah.
For the Friends reunion.
You would have been a great cast member on Friends.
I loved.
You would have been a
loved
Joey,
Friends.
or
I mean,
wouldn't
I
you
go
think?
back
Does
at
anybody think
times. There are many times where I've gone through a lot of lonely nights with friends. I will tell you.
It's a friend to have in the room sometimes.
Yeah, and my friends and I would always go around and be like, who are you most like? I mean, I always came closest to Chandler.
To Chandler?
Well, because I get very sort of like neurotic, and I used to die laughing. But
You were a Chandler Bong.
I can't even imagine how surreal that experience obviously must have been. I mean, you talk about the '90s and a staple of the '90s. Like you were saying, like you have a friend in a way. You would turn into that show and almost sometimes learn better about your friendships or relating with the opposite sex, and you know, in different ways you hadn't thought about. So how did it feel coming back to that after all this time and seeing everybody? And yeah, is it cathartic, or is it sort of weirdly the same goosebumps kind of come back, or you're just, it's so familiar?
It was all of the above, honestly. I don't think we expected for it to sucker punch us as hard as it did in the emotional gut. Like we just had this idea of, this is going to be so fun. We're going back to the sets exactly the way they were, and literally every single nook on a shelf was exactly the same. It was so creepy. But each and every one of us, we walked in and it was just like, whoa.
Yeah.
Time travel. And then back to a time that was, was it 2005, I think, or 4 that it ended. And we were different. We were so little, and our lives were ahead of us, and, so much has changed. And so we kind of had rose-colored glasses on going into it, and then it was just like, whoa, this is really a lot heavier than I thought. But I wouldn't change a lick of it. It was so fun. Every time those guys, we all get together, it's just like no time has passed.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine it's almost like the symphony, probably, kind of.
Yeah, we basically grew up together and taught each other a lot, and we're each other's fall guy, because the world was happening and we were exploding, and sort of that kind of notoriety was all of a sudden, and we were, in these 4 walls doing the show, and this insanity is happening, and thank God we had each other, because you couldn't really talk about it outside, but it was before social media, so we still had some sanity.
Yes.
I mean, I can't imagine now how young kids today are, becoming famous, because there's no respite, there's no place to escape. You're just
to take a breath and
understand what you're going through.
And it's true. Like now, I'm like thinking if if you had social media and Friends was happening, then then it's almost like, I'm sure the network would have said like, hey, can we get a
Selfie.
TikTok video of you
Right.
guys and so much of that was obviously preserved for the screen. That you got those iconic moments, but then, and that's why I sometimes wonder, it's like, where are we without some of that mystery? A little bit.
I get very nostalgic for the past when I think about that. Like, you would have everybody on a cell phone. There wouldn't be any conversations.
I know.
By the way, working on green screen, how do you feel about that, as you did in the Marvel movies? How much of that was actual? I mean, that's got to be tedious.
Yeah, I feel like it's more opportunities to get distracted, because you feel like, oh, someone's going to do the work behind you. Whereas,
The
like if you're in
CGI
the
stuff, right? Or your stunt doubles.
The CGI stuff,
Right.
where somebody goes, you're looking over there and it's a planet, and there's a cliff, and then all these people are coming, and you're just staring at a wall. But then it could also just sort of make you use your imagination in a different way than you haven't before. It's weird. There's always a pro and con to everything, I guess. I never tend to sort of discriminate between any kind of medium or any type of genre. I think it.
Do you have a favorite?
If I could just live in Notting Hill, the movie, forever, I would.
Oh,
or
wouldn't that be nice? Yes.
I mean, there was a lot of those movies
I know.
that were great.
Those great. What do they call them? They weren't rom-coms.
The rom-coms.
Is that a rom-com? Why do they have such a bad rap these days? Because wouldn't that be fun to do one?
It would be. Do you
want to do
it?
it?
Do you want to do one?
I'd do it.
I would do
Totally.
one in a second with you.
Can we shoot it in New York City?
Yeah, that sounds great. They
Okay.
could probably write that very, very quickly.
We'll get on that.